Hello, I'm Mike. Welcome back to Plant Revelations. And on this dreary October day, I thought, what better way to spend it than spend some time in the greenhouse and talk to you about how I like to overwinter some of my semi-tender perennials, semi-tender exotics, shrubs, palms, cacti and succulents in this cold, unheated greenhouse. So we're filming this in Nottingham in the UK, which for those who don't know, it's USDA zone 8B to 9A. So the lowest temperatures we experience are normally about minus 12 Celsius. I'll put that down in Fahrenheit below. Generally, most winters, though, we get around about between minus 5 and minus 10, and that's only normally at night. We very occasionally will get a week or two where it just stays in the minuses, but generally we'll get 1 or 2 days a year of snow. So we are really quite mild but wet. And it's not the cold in the UK that generally kills a lot of these more exotic things. It tends to be the cold and wet combined. So you might find you're from a drier, colder climate, like a more continental climate, and you probably get snow, and you might be able to grow some plants that we can't grow because you get that dry. Essentially, the plants are dry when they're covered in snow, as opposed to we have this constant, relentless damp in the winter. So we're in I think it's a 10 by 14 foot greenhouse. And I've got all manner of things in here. Palms, gingers, cannas, succulents, cacti. So I'm going to talk to you about those different groups and what I do with those. But first of all, I want to touch on some greenhouse rules. I'm not saying I do all of these, but if you do follow them, your chances of survival and success with some of your plants will increase massively. First of all, aeration is the key. Keep your glasshouse very aerated. As much air as possible. If it's a mild winter day, make sure all the windows and doors are cranked open. I leave all my windows and doors open all the time, apart from when it snows or if it's really heavy rain, I might just pull them down a little bit. But generally, they're always ajar, if not fully open. And I've found since I've done that, my success rate with cacti and succulents in the greenhouse has been much more improved. Rather than just losing 25% of everything I've got, I went down to only losing, maybe like one plant in 100 or something. Obviously, anything that's really precious, it's always good to have a backup inside when it comes to cacti and succulents. But generally, I find if I can keep them dry and plenty of air around them, I don't have a problem. The other thing is you need to get to know your greenhouse. So it's not consistently the same all the way around the greenhouse. So for example, by the door, it's going to be a lot colder. And you will sometimes get a bit of rain coming in. So those plants by the door probably need to be the more tougher ones, the ones which may be okay outside through. Whereas your more tender ones want to be perhaps in the greenhouse a bit more. Also, you need to know where your condensation points are. So I know that in this corner, for example, we can get a bit of condensation and that drips down. And I've lost plants there like aeoniums and stuff, which have sat there. And even though I've not watered anything in the greenhouse, they have got too wet and rotted off. So know your greenhouse, know where the damp bits are. Make sure it's clean and tidy. Don't do what I've done, and I've completely rammed it full of plants. Only put in what needs to be in here, because, like I say, the more air flow, the better. The other thing to be mindful of is watering and getting it right. So it's a careful balance. So some plants want no water in the winter, and some plants want to be kept on the dry side, but they are still prone to drying out in the winter. A good example of this is tree ferns. Most people lose their tree ferns in the winter through dryness, not the cold. So sometimes you do have to give them water on a warm day. So we'll talk about some of the individual cases and how much they need watering. But if you are going to give things a water, make sure you water them in the morning on a nice warm day. So let's have a look at some of the individual groups of plants and how I deal with them separately. Over here, we can see some of the cacti and succulents that we've got. And these are specifically, and bromeliads, but these are specifically on their own bench. And there's a good reason for that. I don't want them to get accidentally watered when I'm watering the rest of the plants that do need water during the winter. Now, these should get their last watering around October time, end of September, October time, if it's still warm. And now, theoretically, these do not need watering until the spring. So probably the first water might be March, April. And again, I'll still be looking at the weather to see if we've got like a week or two without frost before I would do that. They do shrivel up a bit, and they will take a bit of shriveling. But yeah, they're better to be dry than they are to be wet. The gingers and the cannas, and if I had any dahlias, I would treat them the same. Soon I will chop all the stems off. When they'll start to go a bit yellow and generally anemic. Got some more over there, and they will get pushed under this staging here. You can see I've already done this, and these are under the cacti because I know they're going to get little to no water there in the winter. I don't want them accidentally getting watered like they would do if they were under this staging on this side. I can't. So the cannas can get chopped back, even though they're still growing. Look, they will stop growing as the temperature's lower. And we want that compost in there to go bone dry. And then I won't water them again until probably March, April. Some of the shoots will start to show. And with dahlias, I used to start watering them about April time. You just start to see some shoots, and then you can start watering them. And I'll pull them out from under the staging and just start to give them more water then. Now, these bananas are one called Sycamensis. There's also Musa Bajou. That one's Sycamensis as well. But now these are hardier than the Ensetes, which I don't grow because they're too much of a pain to faff about with overwintering. And these will get wrapped. So I shall chop the tops off and then, or chop the leaves off. I might leave that. And then I shall wrap them with a bit of Hessian or something, just to protect them from the worst of the frosts in here. Because I want to keep the trunks. A lot of them are root hardy, and normally if they get frosted down to the ground, they will come back again from the roots. But I want to keep the trunks on those. And I'm going to show you next week what I do with my bananas outside, my Musa Bajou, which are the real tough hardy ones. These aren't anywhere near as hardy as Musa Bajou. The next group of plants we've got are these palms. Now, these are Washingtonias. We've got some Phoenix there. And over here, we've got Trachycarpus. We've got Chamaerops, Sables, Bootias, Brahias, all manner of bits and bobs, lots of little Trachycarpus seedlings. Now, these, you've got to do your research on these. So in terms of hardiness is how much I water them. The Washingtonias will probably get watered about once a month during the winter, depending on temperatures. And I have found that in years where I've just not watered them, even though they are almost like a semi-desert palm from California, I have found in years where I barely watered them, I've actually lost them. But I've found in years where I do water them, let's say every 2 or 3 weeks, they do quite well. So, and I didn't lose many at all last year, just a few tiny spindly ones. The Trachycarpus, I just tend to water them when they're dry. They're probably about duo water now because they are pretty tough. Smaller Trachycarpus are never quite as hardy as bigger ones. But the big Trachycarpus are hardy down to -12 to -15. Some people say -20 something, but I don't know about that. But Fortunii is certainly very, very tough. These are Wagnerianus, so these will they're just in here really for to give them a bit of a head start in spring. And if you pot on some of these hardy palms, they will carry on rooting through the winter. And just like I say, you get a bit of a head start on the growing season. But the big ones probably don't need to be in. These Chamaerops can certainly go a bit drier, and these Brahias are a Californian, very dry, loving, beautiful silver palm, which isn't that hardy. And again, they can be kept on the dry side, but I will probably water them about once a month. The Puyas, these Puyas, this Puya mirabilis, type of bromeliad. We've got that one might be Puya. Oh, that's Venusta, that one. I'm sure we've got Chileensis somewhere. Might still be outside. But yeah, we've got a few different types of Puyas. Could be over there with the cacti. They'll get watered about once a month. Again, I found that if I don't water them, I do lose them. We've also got these lemons. These, I do keep these pretty dry, but yeah, they will get, again, probably once a month, they will get a water on a hot day. If there's no hot day in that month, I probably won't water them, but they'll get a good soak probably once a month. And they do this every year, unfortunately. They get this horrible yellow colour. I think that's something to do with the fact, basically, it's not warm enough for them to grow properly. So they just seem to not be able to even photosynthesize. But they often drop quite a few leaves and go yellow. And I think, oh, they've had it. And then they reshoot, and by sort of midsummer again, they start to look nice and lush and green again. We've got Pseudopanax here. They'll get watered quite regularly, probably every 2 weeks. The ferns, I will keep these well watered. These are probably going to go outside. These are a fern called Woodwardia. But I have got some tree ferns in the distance there that need to come in. To get completely dry to the point it's about to wilt, and then I will give it a water, because I really don't want to lose that. I've been after that for a while. I'm hoping I can get this through the winter this year, and I can have a really nice big plant on the patio. So fingers crossed. So that's the greenhouse. I'm going to quickly show you a few things outside, because some of these plants you might choose to leave outside, and I'll show you how I deal with them as well. So this palm here is rock solid. It's completely hardy. I don't do anything to that. That's completely left. Another tactic you can do, if you've got something like this Melianthus major, for example, which is only meant to be hardy to about -5 to -10, is grow it against a wall. This wall's going to be losing heat from the house. It's going to absorb heat in the daytime and then emit it at night. And it's going to be a good 2 or 3 degrees, maybe even 5 degrees warmer here than it's going to be over here in the border. So in this border, I've got some bananas, which will get wrapped. And I'm going to do a video on that next week, but I don't normally wrap them until they get frosted black, which you can see they haven't yet, but I'm going to do it a bit prematurely before you get around to doing yours, because I have noticed on a few pages on Facebook that people seem to be recommending doing the wrong things. Here we've got a ginger outside, which won't be coming in. So with gingers and cannas and dahlias that you leave in the ground, you can just put a pile of bark over the top, and that'll act as an insulating layer, and that'll just give you 2 or 3 inches buffer from the frost. What you've got to remember as well, the ground is warmer than you think. So if you were to put that ginger in a pot on your patio, for example, it would probably have less chance of survival than being in the ground, because pot has got basically 360 degrees exposure to the frost, whereas that plant is only exposed to the frost on the top. So if you can put a pile of bark over, that'll keep some of the moisture out, and it'll keep the frost out. If you have got something like a ginger or a canna in a pot, once it's been frosted, chop it down. And if you haven't got a greenhouse, you can either A, push it against the house where it's, as we've talked about before, much, much warmer. Or B, you could put it under a carport. You could also put it in a porch. Or you could even put it in a garage. It doesn't need light when it's dormant. Just put it in a frost-free place if you can. This beauty here is Tetrapanax. I never protect it, but it never grows that much. I don't think it really likes my soil. It's been here for a few years now, and it's still only sort of waist high. It's about to flower. So I might wrap it up this year. What I do tend to find, and you can see it's happened many, many years on the trot, is that the main stem will get frosted out, and then it'll produce a side shoot. It gets frosted again. And it's happened several times on this. But it seems to have, looks like it's split. I'm hoping I'm going to get several shoots off this. I think I am being hopeful as well. But this year, I think I'm going to wrap this the same way as I do the bananas to try and keep the height. It's not even suckered. A lot of other people seem to sucker, so for some reason it doesn't really like my song. This is meant to be a Rex, but it doesn't look like a Rex. I'm actually debating with buying a different variety and trying that in a different part of the garden. But I'm certainly going to wrap it, give it a chance, and hopefully it will put on a bit of growth next year, and we can have a bit more of a jungly feel and block out these houses a bit. This one here, Bescorneria eucoides. Now I do a variegated version of this, which is not as hardy, but I find that this one's really tough. But I've sort of cleverly situated it. Well, I say cleverly. Wasn't thinking about it at the time. But it turned out to be a smart move, putting it underneath this Trachycarpus fortunii. So that gives a little bit of shelter from frost and too much rain. And it's thrived here. It's done ever so well. In fact, there's almost too much of it. I think I'm going to reduce it down in the spring. But it's a lovely alternative to a yucca. It's not spiky. It's lovely and soft. Has these amazing flowers, huge flower stems that can get up to 10 foot tall. They're bright pink, with sort of bright pink flower stems with sort of greeny bell flowers. Yeah, really, really nice alternative to a yucca. So thanks for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe if you found it helpful or interesting. Ciao, ciao, ciao. See you on the next one.